Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call us to order for the City Council special meeting for Tuesday, December 11th, 2018. Madam City Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Christy Malchow.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Karen Moran.
Present.
Councilmember Tom Hornish.
Present.
Councilmember Jason Ritchie.
Present.
Councilmember Chris Ross.
Present.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
Here.
Councilmember Ramiro Valderrama.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum. Councilmember Valderrama, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Please rise and join us in saying our Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I would entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, by a vote of 7-0, the agenda has been approved. Next, we will have public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to address the council. 3-minute limit per person or 5 minutes of representing the official position of a recognized community organization. If you would like to show a video or PowerPoint, it must be submitted or emailed by 5 p.m. the end of business day to the city clerk, Melanie Anderson at manderson@sammamish.us. Please be aware, council meetings are videotaped and available to the public. First, I have Larry Crandall, followed by Clara Del Shed.
Good evening, Council. My name is Larry Crandall, and I reside at 433 Issaquah Pine Lake Road, Southeast, Unit 1406, Sammamish, Washington. Considering the content of what will follow, there will be no need to remind people about not applauding. Contrary to some opinions, the Council needs inspiration rather than intervention. In wondering what would be inspirational at this time, the word simple and elegant came to my mind. Lately, there has been put forth the possibility of special parking for our wounded veterans, a creation of a grove of trees to honor the mayors who have served the city of Sammamish. Now may be the opportune time for Sammamish to consider creating a city flag. Many cities have designed and proudly fly a flag. For your information, and you want to Google it or Bing it, vexillology is the technical term for the study of flags and their uses. That is all for right now. However, a city flag might be something simple and elegant that the council could rally around. Thank you.
Thank you. Clara Del Shed, and then anyone else wishing to address the council can kind of queue up over here on this side. I don't think it's on. I think there's a button there, Clara Del.
Push the button.
There we go.
There you go. You're
Hey. I would like to speak on behalf of the Arts Commission, the Sammamish Arts Commission. So I will speak as rapidly as I can. I should be able to contain all my words within 5 minutes. Clara Del Shed, 2313 Sahalee Drive East, Sammamish, Washington, 98074. As a Sammamish Arts Commissioner, approval from the consent agenda for signature authorization for interim city manager to approve payment of approximately $10,000 as remainder of completion of the first 4 locations, or 10 boxes. This is on the Traffic Wrap Z project, and 50% of amount covering the additional 7 locations, or 17 boxes, at $20,000 for a total of approximately $30,000. This fund payable to Traffic Wrap Z is to be paid from the Arts Commission's 2018 biennial operating budget, which expires at the end of calendar 2018. We, the Arts Commission, are your City Council selected and appointed designees. The Arts Commission has disciplined its efforts and expenditures to assure adequate operating funds would be present to be paid before December 31st, 2018. The first contract of approximately $20,000 was added to the second contract of approximately $40,000 to create a supplemental contract plus or minus $60,000. The first 50% of the first contract for 4 locations, or approximately $10,000, has already been paid to traffic reps. Because the Arts Commission does not conduct a monthly meeting in December 2018, at the November 2018 monthly meeting, the Arts Commission voted unanimously to expend this amount of approximately $30,000 of its 2018 biennial operating funds balance. This payment to traffic rep Z is to be expedited to be made to the firm before the end of calendar 2018. The Arts Commission does not desire that any carryover and/or capital funds be introduced or considered for this payment, since the Arts Commission has specifically disciplined itself to facilitate these 2018 biennial operating funds would be directed for this specific cause. On the second contract, now referred to as a supplemental agreement, one of the 7 planned locations was the unit at Issaquah Pine Lake Road and Klahani Boulevard. The City of Sammamish Public Works Department has indicated that potential construction or modifications of that roadway and specific intersections containing the traffic light box may occur within 2019. Therefore, a different intersection with the same utility box configuration has been introduced into consideration for the substitute location. Should focus and longevity on this project continue, revisiting my already researched and designed units at the Klahani location could be achieved potentially in 2020 or 2021. If additional locations are considered in the aforementioned 2021 timeframe, the Arts Commission can evaluate how it would wish to direct and allocate those funds. For your information, I am in the process of creating a detailed description of the units at each location to include photos, text, identities, dates, introduction of specific technologies such as barcodes, etc. Also, the various schools are anxiously awaiting the completion of these planned units so the schools can introduce and incorporate historical field trips for classes. This is a City Council requested project. As an Arts Commissioner, I am personally and singularly implementing this project. Thank you for your City Council endorsement and encouragement of this box project, which you initially suggested several years ago that should be considered and implemented. Thank you for expediting payment during calendar 2018 from our available 2018 biennial operating budget funds to Traffic Rep Z to cover the specific aforementioned amount. This is our or my gift to the City Council, who in turn can translate it into the City Council's gift to the Sammamish community. I personally thank City Council members who have consistently encouraged me to continue to research, design, and lay out each and every geographic location considered. Each of you should be at the end of a resident's phone call while the resident tearfully expresses the box wraps are evidence of the City Council's desire to retain historical legacy and maintain the character of the City of Sammamish. Regarding a recent and annual acknowledgement of City of Sammamish volunteer hours, I sincerely and deeply appreciate the City Council members who so sensitively and caringly sent me magnificent flowers. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for the city manager. For the city manager, we have the item 15 that has the traffic wraps under that. Is there any reason why the 30,000 as requested to be put this year would not be part of that?
I'm going to call on Ms. Fesser.
As a part of the operating budget?
Am I to answer that?
Well, either one. Yeah, you can answer third.
Actually, we've talked in great deal at the Arts Commission that this could be a reality. The money is there. It could be a reality. So we're just asking that it become a reality.
And so,
The money, the operating budget money, those dollars are there.
Understand so my
to be
question
spent before the end of 2018, without any carryover assumed at all.
understand. On item 15, we have traffic wraps, so could that be part of that, or would that be separate from what's in item 15 and the money that's being requested under
Item
consent?
15, I don't have before me what item 15 is.
Well, I'm asking Angie if she
Is
knows
what?
the item that's coming up, if she can.
What is item 15?
Yes, but is,
Yes, it's an
yeah,
amendment.
there's a consent item.
In conjunction, yes, I'm asking,
That's
obviously,
correct,
that
but I'm
you,
asking, is the 30,000 that you're asking for this year part of item 15? So it
Yes,
is.
The
let's have
answer is
Angie,
yes.
maybe if Angie can
Yes.
step up.
yes,
and
the answer is yes. They combined the two contracts to achieve a supplemental contract to total a little over 60s. The first one was for 20,000, the second one was for 40.
Understand.
So those are combined for the supplemental.
No, understand.
So the 30,000 covers the 10,000 remaining on the first, and the 20,000 is 50%
Understand.
of the second portion.
Understand. But my question, I think Angie might be better. If I approve number 15 as it is, the 30,000 that Claridel has just mentioned would be then allocated for this year. Is that correct or not?
Well, if I can come to the mic, please. So item 15 is actually asking for approval of the contract. And it's a amendment to the existing contract. The first contract was for 20,000. The amendment to the contract is for about 41,000. So the entire project is 61,000.
That's right.
So the 10,000 has been spent already. It's part of a deposit, and will complete this year. But the contract and the installation of the other wraps will not be completed until next year and beyond. So we're asking for approval of the contract. The Arts Commission's allocation does more than cover the project between carryover and their annual allocation of about 64,000. So the funds are there, and additional funds are also available to the Arts Commission to do other work.
I understand, but the question is, will that 30,000 be issued this year versus
Doesn't sound
carryover
like
The
it.
30,000 will not be spent this year because the work has not been completed. So we can't spend the money without the work being completed. There is a deposit, let me
Hold
finish,
on, let's-
please. So the contract does require a 50% deposit. So there would be 20,000 spent this year to secure that contract if this is all completed by the end of this year.
Okay,
May
so,
I add my
hold
comment?
on, so the other 10,000 then are currently, which we would like to have this year, would be currently for next year, if I understand correctly.
Well, technically, if the fourth box is completed, we can finish the first contract, and that would be in total of $20,000 expenditure for 2018. Plus, the amendment to the contract does require 50% at another 20,000. So if this is all completed and wrapped up, $30,000 will be sent to traffic wraps as part of this contract. So to answer your question, yes, 30,000 this year.
Okay, 30,000 will go this year. All right, thank you.
Okay.
You have a closing?
I just want to reiterate that on any proposal, they're usually written 50% up front before you even start it. So as she just said, 10,000, the first 4 boxes, which were actually the equivalent of 10 boxes, first 4 locations, we owe 10,000 to complete those installations, and then 50% of the next 7 or 17 boxes, which constitutes 20,000. So up front, and that's the way contracts are, 50% at the beginning. No, I've done a lot of research on them, but no, that's the way the contract is. So I'm asking for 30,000, which would be specifically spent from our present and available 2018 biennial operating funds budget, and the money is there.
Understand. And my understanding is from Angie, we approved 15, that 30,000 will be given.
First, she said it would be spent next year. The only thing to be spent next year is the remaining 50% of the second portion of the supplemental contract, which would be the final 20,000. So in 2019, yes, we will have the funds to spend that 20,000 to complete the entire supplemental contract. I'm asking for the 30,000.
Understand.
As is the Arts Commission has disciplined itself and has unanimously voted to spend that 30,000 out of operating funds budget, the check to be written before the end of calendar 2018.
Councilmember Valderrama, may I suggest maybe you pull this item so we can further discuss it outside of public comment?
I think so.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council? Yes, Mary, please.
Hello, my name's Mary Wichter, and I live at 408 208th Avenue Northeast in Sammamish. I wanted to just say a few things about consent agenda item 6, which is on water quality. First, I thank the city very much for being interested in water quality and having contracts and doing something. I know that topics have been several times in front of the city council this year, and thank you for approving them. I just wanted to say a couple things. Since we're interested in salmon, some of the worst things for salmon are zinc and copper in metals, and it's because it dulls their sense of smell. And if a salmon can't smell his stream or smell things to find his food or smell things to help get away from predators, it's a problem. And like a person can take vitamin supplements, including copper and zinc, because we need them. And when you get too much zinc, it just tastes like water and you can't taste it anymore. For salmon, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny parts per billion that's too much for them. That's either acute or chronic problems. So I'm glad to see that that was added in as some of the testing. Where copper and zinc come from are car tire abrasions for zinc and car brake pads, and even though they're illegal and they're getting phased out, I think that doesn't happen until 2021 or 2025. I think there's some education that could happen. A lot of people use things on their roofs and for their moss, which contain zinc and metals, and I know when you have plats come through, there's things that plats shouldn't have galvanized nails, or they shouldn't have things in their roofing or uncoated metals, but I think some more education on people using products would actually help. The other thing I wanted to say, there are areas in the city that have a lot of septic. Septic has nitrates and it has other bacteria that are bad, and I don't believe that's any part of it. So some of those things I would hope that you'd be looking at or watching for. And then just on page 112 of 441 in the packet today, it says current monitoring efforts by the city and King County within the city of Sammamish are limited in scale and do not provide city staff with the means to identify pollution sources or develop projects that improve water quality. So if you have certain places where things are high, you want to be able to identify where those places are and try to do that, I think, in order to prioritize your projects. And even though we don't have any data from Zaccoose or Ebright Creek yet, if you look at the existing data that King County has, they're already, I believe, over the line for metals, for copper and zinc. So I think knowing that even before this stuff comes in, that can help you as you move forward. And then just as a final thing, I wanted to thank Claire Del Shed. I've been to a couple of Art Commission meetings. The traffic wraps are allowed now because of the sign code changes that you did. I was just at the Water District. I believe their mural will be getting replaced. That's also because of the sign code changes that you were done. And I just want to thank everybody. It's a lot of work and time and effort that goes in. I think it's things that's benefit the community. And even though it takes time to talk about, it's definitely worth it. And she has 4 of them by Safeway, Discovery Elementary, by Lewis Thompson Road and the Parkway, and I missed one.
Eastside Catholic.
Eastside Catholic by Metropolitan Market. So if you haven't seen those, please do. They're great history, and thanks for all the work and support.
Thank you.
Good evening, City Council. Paul Stickney, 22626 Northeast England Hill Road. Just a couple extemporaneous comments. Super legislative meeting, very interesting, and I think it was a real, I'll stutter on the P, productive outcome. I'd like to support Commissioner Crandall's idea for a flag and of the Arts Commission. I've been out on my walk and have seen Claradell and Harry out installing the wraps. They just do an awesome job. I go over and chat with them now and then, and they do their thing. I sold real estate in the state of Montana for about 12 to 13 years before moving here in 1990, a couple cities, and was involved there. Those cities created a collage. One used etched marble, I'll spit out the M, and one used this cool raised thing. I have them at my house. I'd be happy to show them to you. But it was basically a city picture of all the parts that made up what the true meaning and spirit and vision of that city was. And they're really cool. It might be time to see if the Arts Commission might want to check into some sort of, picture that somebody could buy and put on their wall that would be a, remembrance of living in Sammamish. And last, wish everybody happy holidays and enjoy the holidays. That's it.
Thank you. We might have another Arts Commission project with coming up with a flag, maybe. Okay, anyone else that would like to address the council? Oh, okay. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
I would like to remove from the consent agenda
Item 15.
items 13
Okay.
and item 15 on the traffic wraps.
Okay, so we will put items 13 and 15 under unfinished business. We'll put them after item 21, so number 13 first and then number 15. So all those in favor of the consent agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 7-0, we have passed the consent calendar as amended. So next, we have our police services study final report. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, tonight you are to receive the draft of the final report. This is a informational only piece this evening, as you will be receiving this report, and it will be back on your agenda in early January for approval of that report. Needless to say, there are some big considerations in this report, and there's a lot to it, so you'll want to take a time to digest this. And with that, to give you the report, I'm going to turn it to Mr. Sugg to present our consultants and any other information you may wish to impart this evening.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor, Council, and City Manager. Mike Sugg, Management Analyst for the City Manager's Office. I am joined by our consulting team on the Police Services Study Project. We have Kristen Mate, who is our Project Manager, Brian Murphy, our Project Director, as well as Tag and Virginia Gleason, who are supporting Burke as subject matter experts. And as the City Manager mentioned, we are here tonight to present a draft of the Police Services Study final report and consultant recommendations. This report is a culmination of 9 months of work, including significant public outreach, as well as a thorough analysis of the police department and trends in the community and in policing in general. We presented this draft report to the Public Safety Committee 3 weeks ago and had a great discussion and heard a lot of feedback. Based on that feedback, we did rework the consultant recommendations into more of a matrix or kind of a work plan that says, here's what the consultant recommends the city do over the short, medium, and longer term. So this is where I would normally turn it over to the consultants, but it looks like we were having a little trouble with IT.
All right. Hello, hello. Good evening. Madam Mayor, members of council, we're very pleased to be here tonight. Thank you for the introduction, City Manager and Mike Sugg. Again, my name is Brian Murphy. I'm the Project Director with Burke, and my job is pretty simple tonight. I'm going to lay some context just generally about the focus of our effort, the current state of your police department, which is quite strong, I will say, and then Kristen, my colleague Kristen Mate, is going to step us through our recommendations. Virginia Gleason will be able to support with questions and answer as well. Our process began in March of this year, and as Mike mentioned, we had a robust process looking at some data, engaging community members as well. We did a virtual town hall. We met with the Healthy Communities Coalition and the Sammamish Youth Board. We met with city staff, stakeholders, and also members of your department. And we've had 3 different touches here with both the Public Safety Committee and now the full City Council. First to share the existing conditions report in June and July, and then to come back with options in September, October. And now pleased to be here with final recommendations in our final report. So tonight I'll speak briefly to the current state, which is kind of a summary of where you're at right now. I'll briefly touch on where we think you might want to be in the future, your desired future state, and then Kristen will speak through the recommendations. So as you know, you contract for police services with King County Sheriff's Office, and I think you're largely happy with that. Most importantly, your residents feel that they are safe. The Sammamish Police Department, from our view, is functioning well. And one note that we collected from the community engagement is not only do they feel safe, but they'd actually like to see a little bit more of your police department in a non-enforcement role or in that community policing role. You do staff relatively leanly in your current model, and I think that's appropriate given the level of safety that you have in the community. It means that you rely a bit on KCSO for backfill, and our recommendation is as you have additional demand for services going forward, you staff appropriately to that demand, but you don't fundamentally change your model. So you retain the same staffing model generally that you have now, but we'll be talking a little bit about adding some staff over time and adding another patrol district. Another point of consideration in your current situation or your current state is some pressures on both your command and your administrative staff, and you'll see this reflected in our recommendations that we have phased in over time. Finally, we recognize that the city wants to be well managed. It wants to have a strong police department. Public safety is important to quality of life and overall quality of the residential and businesses here in Sammamish. So making some important investments in technology, retaining personnel, and maintaining a positive culture are all part of our recommendations. So here I'm going to jump ahead for just a moment here to this desired future state. So our recommendations are kind of designed to ramp you towards this future state. We've pegged this time in 2028, which we suppose is the build out of your town center. We see you continuing to contract for services with King County Sheriff's Office, and we see you continuing to be happy with those services. We think that the city residents will continue to feel safe, and your department's going to be known for being well managed. We think you'll have a police chief with the rank of major by that time, with still a captain and 6 sergeants, which are a few more than you have now, 25 budgeted patrol officers, which is a few more than you have now, and 4 patrol districts, which is 1 more than you have now. In addition to an administrative assistant, we see you operating with a community service officer that focuses on that community policing. You'll be supported by a strong police foundation that brings in some revenue and other means of support from the community. And that will actually help create a really positive culture among your personnel who will seek out Sammamish for the focus on community policing, as that's going to be aligned with their desires for how to practice law enforcement. And you'll be using technology in a forward-thinking way that'll both help public safety and help you manage resources efficiently. So Kristen's going to do the harder lift here, bringing you step by step through our recommendations to that desired state.
Good evening. So I'm going to be walking through a couple time periods. We're starting with 2019, which is kind of the investments we think should be made as soon as possible. Then we have a time frame 2020 to 2022, which is in the near term, and then 2023 to 2028, bringing you through to when the town center is estimated to be completed. Each slide walks through what we think the service delivery model will look like at each step, what we're suggesting around resource capacity, other, and technology, and at the bottom of each page is the costs that we've associated with these recommendations. So in 2019, we think to address some of the constraints on the administrative side in the department, that it'd be helpful to add one community service officer, which can not only aid the current administrative position, but could also start this focus on community policing. They could potentially start helping with the Sammamish Police Foundation. And we're also suggesting to add 2 patrol officers. And this is to help get to the anticipated number of patrol officers you're going to need by 2020. You're going to need about 21 officers by that date, which is 3 more than you currently have for patrol. So we're suggesting to add 2 in 2019, and then we have some more patrol officers that get added in the subsequent years to get you up to this 4th patrol district.
I have a few questions if you're about to. So you have 3 asterisks behind the community service officer position of $95,000, and I noted further down it's $145,000 through King County. Can you kind of explain the difference in cost there?
Sure. So we've based the community service officer position here on a city staff position, and we're using some estimates of current administrative role as well as some of the management analyst salary and benefits to try to estimate that cost. And at King County, they break down every single position that they have, and they list their community service officer position at that $145,000.
Okay, and then my next question is you have the totals, what this would cost us, about a $500,000, but it says plus technology, but it doesn't really break out what that is or what that cost might look like. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, we're still trying to nail down the technology costs, but they would be associated with purchasing the automated license plate readers and establishing a video camera registry.
Do we have a ballpark?
Part of that is going to depend on your city IT infrastructure and some choices that your city technology manager would want to make about whether you wanted to do cloud storage or you wanted to do on-premise storage, and what other tools that you might have in the city that might make it harder or easier. Also, with the automated license plate readers, there's a number of options. You can have them fixed stationary at locations, or you can have them mounted on vehicles. So those would be some of the things you would want to walk through. Also, the number of them that you would want to have.
Do we have any now?
You don't have any automated license plate readers now. It would be something that the county it does not have as part of your contract. There's also some other storage issues that you would want to be putting some policies together about whether you wanted to store that information to the minimum level for the state retention period, or if there are other reasons you might want to have it longer. So there'd be a number of variables that you'd want to be looking at to go ahead and get the cost for that. I can say the cost for the video registry is very low. It's something where you can, it would be something that would be internet-based and would not be difficult for you to probably have a portal for that on your city website. The license plate reader data, if you wanted to go that direction, it would not take a long time to cost out, but it would be discussing with Public Works and other people exactly how you'd like to use it.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Valderrama.
Yeah, 2 questions. Well, one, or a comment be under the school resource officer, the options for consideration. That includes, as we had discussed, asking the school districts to fund those, especially given they get a much larger share of the property bill and taxes than we do on that, as has been done in other cities. The second one's actually towards city manager. And we had talked in the Public Safety Committee about the community policing admin for this year. The other patrol officers, we had talked for 2020, as it said. So I thought that was going to be on 2020, unless this is to try to ramp up into hiring. So as I recall, it's like an 18-month cycle to hire that. Is that what this is trying to reflect, the hiring cycle? Or are you saying actually hire them in 19? Because I thought those were going to be hired in 2020.
We are trying to phase it in to get to an additional number by 2028 for the 4th Patrol District, and to consider that it'll take some time to get them on board.
Because I saw the cycle, but I was going to see if the city manager recalls that that was 2020 hitting the budget.
Well, again, what you're receiving this evening is recommendations. I think we still have to take it from here and look at these costs in relationships to everything else, and you'll have to make some strategic decisions on how you ramp this thing up as you move through time.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
One thing that I didn't see, and maybe I just missed it, was how many officers we're actually utilizing as full-time equivalents right now. So you talk about that we have 18 as part of our contract, but we know that we actually require more and that those get backfilled by King County, but I didn't see anywhere where it talked about how many full-time equivalents we're actually pulling from the King County Sheriff's Office. To understand where, and I, in the report here, it says 2, but I thought I heard you just say 3 to get to 21. So I just want to clarify, do we need 2 more, 3 more? What are we looking at there? So first, how many full-time equivalents are we actually utilizing in the city right now?
Sure. So the data that I have was actually from April, and I believe there were 17 patrol officers and 2 traffic officers that are, instead of focusing on traffic, they're acting to help fill the staffing minimums on patrol. So that is one down from the budgeted positions, and I'm not sure if that has changed.
I don't think that's my question. So my question is not how many do we have as part of the Sammamish contract, but how many are actually getting used? Because it's my understanding that we're having to pull from the King County Sheriff's Office on a pretty regular basis, right? Every time an officer is out for any reason, court, vacation, illness, training, that we're pulling in. So do we have a number of, how many people is that really?
So we did look at kind of what the backfill costs equal in terms of full-time equivalents, and it was about 2 officers.
Okay.
But the benefit of the backfill is that you can use them strategically instead of just hiring 2 officers that then are
That's okay, and I wasn't implying that we shouldn't hire more. I was just trying to get a sense. So what I hear you saying is we're actually already utilizing 20 officers today, even though we don't have 20 in our contract, because we're basically backfilling 2 positions over time. Would that be a correct statement?
Yes, and you're utilizing your traffic officers as patrol officers.
Okay, great. And then, so we're talking about adding 2 for 2019. Was it 3 for 2020 then? Is that why I heard 2 different numbers? I heard 2 and I heard 3.
So we're trying to ramp up. We're doing 2 in 2019, 2 in the 2020 to 2022, and 3 in the final period. And that's to get you to the 25 officers we think you would need as a minimum to staff 4 patrol districts.
And each one of those is additive. So it's 2 in 2019, 2 more in 2021, and 3 more for 2028. Okay. And then to the school resource officers, did you guys reach out at all to the school districts to understand what their plans are over the next year or 2 in terms of school resource officers? Are they planning to have them? Do they have funding for them? Do we understand what those plans are? Because I'm completely supportive that I think we need to make sure we have school resource officers for our middle and high schools that are within the city. But I also know that at least Lake Washington just came out with their sort of plans going forward, and I know that they have a bunch of security proposals in their plans. I don't recall if I saw anything about a school resource officer in there. So did you guys reach out and get that information from the school districts?
We did not, but we know that both of the public high schools in Sammamish currently each have 1 school resource officer, and the city and the school district split the cost of them during the school year, and the city covers the cost of those officers when it's not during the school year.
Okay.
And we have heard, I believe we heard that the city has been contacted by a private high school about this topic as well.
Okay, so I think it would be good if we could understand what the plans are from the school districts, because they're working on their future planning for security. They're implementing new security measures all the time. So I don't know if school resource officers are part of that. And then when it comes to the technology piece, again, what's King County Sheriff's Office plans? Because what you talked about in terms of what kind of technology we need to have in the city and store retention policies and things like that, again, I would think that we would look to the King County Sheriff's Office to take the lead on that, as opposed to us having to kind of go it alone, that it would be much more efficient to tag on to whatever they already have in place, as opposed to us starting from scratch.
It's my understanding that the county does not have plans to go forward with either of those particular types of technology, and they would be something that might not be really practical, especially in the unincorporated areas of the county. So I think it would be something that would probably be a city option. I think that getting it tied into the county's technology probably would be a lot more expensive and a lot more complicated, and it is one of the items that you could do as a standalone city technology project.
Okay, and when you say it's not your understanding, you mean we know definitively that they have no plans to
It's
implement
not
this
in
stuff?
their plan, but
Got it.
they've had a few other things that have gone to the forefront of their technology issues, such as body-worn cameras and some other issues. And there are some particular communities that have a negative response to license plate readers. And so it really is more of a community-by-community type of decision. I think it would be very difficult to get a county-wide consensus about using that technology.
Great, thank you.
One additional question: that as you guys were discussing the school resource officer, you said that we split the costs with the school district during school. What is that officer doing when school's not in, when the city is paying? Are they coming over and working for the city then full-time, or? Yes, okay. Very good, thank you.
So I'm going to walk you through the 2020 to 2022 recommendations. Here we suggest that you continue contracting with King County, but you may want to start laying the groundwork to explore regional service delivery. This is kind of a desired future state by a lot of places, but it's a really technical and difficult thing to achieve, to get kind of a police department that matches how crime occurs, because crime really doesn't have any idea about where jurisdiction's boundaries are, and really it could be happening regionally. I would think King County feels like they're a regional service delivery provider, but they're not serving geographically proximate areas all the time. So this approach would be working with the jurisdictions next to you to try to come up with a way to approach police services from a regional perspective, more similar to kind of how fire is approached. So that's just to start thinking about that in this time period. We also suggest switching to, right now, as Brian mentioned, you have a police chief that is the rank of captain, and we suggest switching the police chief in Sammamish to the rank of major. This helps both on the administrative side as well as how the city appears side, and it also, King County typically will switch to a major when a city hits a 50,000 population, and now that Sammamish is above that, we think it would be a good idea to do this as well. In this situation, the police chief becomes a major. You still have a captain who can provide support to the major and can do some of the duties of the police chief when she's not in the city. We also would suggest adding 2 patrol officers here. One is to meet your service demand with your calls for service, and the other is to start to ramp up for your 4th Patrol District.
Councilmember Ross.
Yeah, just some clarification. A regional service delivery is independent from a 4th Patrol District strategy, correct? You can do
Yes.
one or the other or both? Right.
Yeah, it's independent.
And the other thing, item on the regional service delivery, being a low-crime city, what would be the incentive for us to partner in a regional delivery model?
So there we're talking about actually moving away from your contract with the King County Sheriff's Office and joining forces, so to speak, with neighboring cities in the region. A lot of crime is sort of happening across city boundaries. You're served by a regional service provider, but it's not kind of the same thing as a regionally focused police service delivery mechanism, because King County Sheriff's Office is serving the entire county. I think at this point in the 2020 to 2022 time period, I would just be talking with neighboring cities about whether that's of interest and whether that's a direction that you want to go. I think it's something that would be more likely to be happening, say, 10 or 15 years from now. So we're just trying to sort of warm to that topic as you move forward in time. Yeah.
Okay, so I will also walk you through the last time period to ramp up to the 4th Patrol District. Here, we're still continuing with the King County contract, still exploring the regional service delivery, but we're adding 3 patrol officers, which will get you to that 25 patrol officers total, and we're adding 2 sergeants to help provide supervision to the expanded patrol officers. The 2 sergeants will also help provide 24/7 supervision in the city. Currently, with the number of sergeants, there's 4. There are times in the city when you're relying on King County's precinct for supervision, and they're not Sammamish-specific sergeants. And I think here also we're aiming towards that desired future state where Sammamish now is a desirable place for officers that are interested in community policing, and you have some of that extra capacity in your officers to be focused on that, as well as your police chief as a major and the support with the captain. You have some of the space to deal with some of these community initiatives.
Councilmember Ross, did you have another question, or is that still on? Okay, just making sure.
So this last slide just shows each of those previous slides on one, so you can kind of see how we're growing from 3 patrol districts to 4, and from the 18 officers to 20 to 22, and then 25, and kind of which investments are made when, and kind of how the total is changing each year. And the totals are in 2018 dollars.
Yes. It says per year on this slide, but that's not indicated on the other slides. I'm assuming that you don't actually mean $1 million per year from the 2023. No. It's $1 million total over
for that time period.
Okay, just wanted to be sure because It says per year there.
Thank you. So one other note is just that this last time period is really tied to having that 4th Patrol District, and that would be serving it would likely be serving the urban core, including the town center. That's something that the city and the police department would have to look at and see what's driving calls for service and where does it make sense to draw the patrol districts geographically and with calls for service. But if the timeline changes for the town center, your timeline for hiring additional officers may also change. We also think that there could be potential for cost savings if you look into more tiered policing options, which means you would be using non-commissioned or commissioned or partially commissioned officers to do certain tasks. That last note is just about the community service officers that we talked about before. Yeah.
If I could just sort of emphasize the points that Kristen just made here is that this is an outline or direction to move. Obviously, in accepting our report or moving forward in our recommendations, you're not buying into each of those staffing increments over time. And what we'd be encouraging is for you to be working with your department to understand what are the actual needs at that time frame. It's real difficult to look ahead in this time frame, but we're trying to move you in the direction that we see that you'll eventually need to get. I get very leery of saying in 2028 you will have 25 officers, because who knows, actually. But you will definitely need more than you have now, and we think this is moving you at about the right pace in about the right direction.
Mr. City Manager.
Yes, I want to go back because make sure this answer is correct to the mayor's question. As I look at this chart, in 2018, you're adding 1 CSO under this recommendation, 1 CSO, 2 patrol officers, technology. That's $490,000 per year. The next year, you would add 1 major and 2 patrol officers. That increases that amount to $645,000 per year. And then the final one is 2 additional sergeants, 3 more patrol officers, which increases that a little over $1 million per year. So it is a yearly cost we're looking at there.
It's becoming.
Yeah.
So I don't see any additional questions from council, but just for our edification up here, we're just, this will be on the consent calendar at our next meeting, which is not until January, for acceptance of the study. So if. Voting on that now? No, it'll be on consent.
So you have a lot of choices there you're going to have to make, and so
it's coming off consent.
Okay, Councilmember Ritchie.
So the math part again. Not sure I fully understand what was just said there. I want to make sure I understand what was transpired about the whole. Not that it matters a whole lot right now. I really appreciate the work you guys put into this. It definitely gives us a great, framework to work from as we build out our police force. Thank you. I just want to clarify the additional spend per year in 2019 is $490,000 plus technology.
Yes.
The additional spend in 2022 is an additional $645,000 on top of the 490?
Yes.
And then the 23 through 28 year is an additional on top of the 645 and 490 is $1,030,000.
Yep.
So we are talking about over $2 million per year by the time we get out towards the 2023 to 2028 full build out. Is that what you're recommending?
Yep. And in the parentheses on the bottom is kind of the total police budget and what it would look like with these additions.
Right. So we're at roughly 7 and change now, and you're saying we should be at 9 and change now. That's basically.
Yep. That's what
So the other question I had is about technology, right? So interesting conversation about technology and who knows where we'll be. You know, we all didn't have these a couple years ago, and who knows what's going to happen 10 years from now, you know? So my kids will have it if it's out there. So, or they'll want it, right? So the technology number is, I don't see a technology number on 22 through 2022, 23 through 28. Is there, are we just kind of putting that out there for 2019 because we have a better idea of it and we just don't know? Or, I mean, I get that we have some IT infrastructure things that we need to be doing on our end from a city perspective. Do you see there being large expenses for, I mean, do we save money by getting those things in advance? Is there a way to kind of get ahead of it? Do we want to be working with King County and shadowing what they're doing as far as body cameras? Or what's your perception there?
I think the best plan would be to have some small group of people from the city that includes IT and people from your public safety group to look at what are the types of technology. There's so much, there are options of whether you want it to be additional technology that you're giving to the department to use to in their patrol functions. There's also a large number of things that you can do that, for example, could be interactive through your city, your public-facing website, where you would be able to do some fairly detailed, interactive use of crime data that could be at relatively small neighborhood segments. Now, maybe there are some GIS tools that you have here in the city that you would overlay from information that you bring in from King County, from the crime data that you could use, and you could also incorporate that, for example, with your planning department. So there, it would just sort of depend what direction you wanted to integrate some of the crime information with your other city services. Some people don't want to have an interactive website with the public. Some people find that that's a great way to communicate public safety issues, as well as have a 24-hour ability to communicate with your residents without having to add a bunch of additional staff. So it just depends. There could be ways that they could be sending in more information, public safety concerns to you through that portal that could be, your desire of how much of that you would want to take on.
That's pretty much what I was going for. Thank you. I mean, in the hopes that we can utilize technology, not that you can never replace a member of the police force or community service officer for that interactive conversation between two people or a group of people. I hope that never goes away. But if we can utilize technology, and given where we live and our constituents, that's, right here, we're at kind of the ground zero for that kind of stuff, right? So I would hope that we can utilize technology to maybe figure out where we can save resources and have have those direct conversations between community service officers, police force, those are our King County folks working directly with people on really critically important social needs. I'm thinking domestic violence, things like that, rather than the idea of having technology take the place of things where, maybe a person doesn't need to be there necessarily. I don't know what that would look like. I would hope technology can save us money in the long term. That would be I hope. And I think that you've kind of left that door open, and I appreciate that. But I would hope we can get there.
And I think you can look at technology really enhancing the service rather than replacing it, but being able to offer a wider range of more available services to your community. It also, there's a public safety overlay in almost everything that happens, especially looking at the amount that you have with schools. There are ways that, and especially with the particular police chief you have, who is a very good communicator, I could imagine a number of ways that they could be assisting with public safety in the schools using some technology that could be helpful with that. And you do have a community based on the reports that I was reading about the people who live in your community. You have a very technical, savvy community. Also, if you do go down the road to having a police foundation, there are times when acquiring certain technology products through your police commission can be especially financially favorable to you. Sure. And if there were people on your police commission who were connected onto technology companies, there's a lot of these things that I think would be very low cost to you, but you would need to put that group of people, some sort of I used to work with a group of Community Technology Advisory Board that advised us at City of Seattle, and they had great ideas that we had never thought of, and they had people from the community from Tableau and some other companies that came in and offered to create apps specifically for the city to use for public safety needs. So I think you have a huge opportunity here to probably get some great technology at relatively low cost.
And to make it a priority. We have the capacity, and to make it a priority for our community to let them know that let's tap the resources that we have. Thank you.
Councilmember Valderrama.
Building on that question, I'm always a little reluctant to send people to the candy store and for the technology. I've seen it in the military. They go and they start saying, oh, I need new thermal goggles. Oh, man, new body armor. Oh, there's a new, but that's not their role and function. What I'd like to know is...
Romero, can you turn your mic on, please?
Is there some technology that's standard that their police are utilizing that we should be utilizing? Because even if you get like the body cams bring a lot of issues with it, with freedom of information, storage of information. Poor Lita, hair will go gray before it should happen on that. So rather than us trying to figure it out, I'd rather see what the industry around us of our peer cities, if they're utilizing something that we're not utilizing as a first basis and cut to look at that.
I think the two items that would be first for you to look at, one would be the video camera registry, and that is something not very complicated to put together, not very expensive to put together. And then
when you say
second,
video camera registry, what does that, it's not on the courts, right?
It provides you an opportunity for any either business or a resident who has a video camera, they can register it with you. So in the event there is some sort of crime that happens, you don't have to go canvass a neighborhood. You already know, we know that these people have a camera and they are willing to share with us. Several of the home video cameras now have the ability that they can just email the footage to the department without having to go through someone going and downloading it from their homes. It's very helpful. The city where I live, the city of Oakland, we have a whole team of people who go out and collect video, and it definitely is extremely helpful, especially when you're having things like package thefts and property crime. And once people understand that you have a coordinated, it's sort of a community, block watch on steroids, and much faster and much more effective tool. And then the other one with the license plate readers, because you have one primary arterial that goes through the city. Let's say, for example, you are having a crime where you had identified a particular vehicle that was causing some crime in your city. It would help you be able to find that particular vehicle. It's also helpful in finding missing persons, stolen vehicles. Depending on the type of property crime you're having, it can be very helpful to solve it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hornish, did you have a question or comment?
No, I was glad she just explained those two technology. I guess I do have one question. Is there any way that we can find out, and I think maybe you answered it, it's not really going to save anything, it just enhances from those things? Because has anybody done any type of research to kind of show the benefits of the technology?
I actually have some documents for both of those types of tools. The International Association of Chiefs of Police recently have put out quite a bit of information about the benefits of having the license plate readers. And the video camera registry, I know from my own experience that it's a helpful tool, but I know that there's some other reasonably sized cities in our area, such as the city of Des Moines, who are using the video camera registries, and it could certainly get a contact from that police department. Chief Ken Thomas, I know, would be more than happy to speak with the city or with Chief Bennett.
I think that'd be some good information when we come to making those decisions. Thank you.
So I just wanted to hit on one last slide. This came up from questions from the Public Safety Committee about what are ways that we could pay for this increase in police service. And this is really focused on increasing police resources, not on facilities or capital investments. So we're exploring here the feasibility. So what is the city's eligibility or the political feasibility of implementing these? What's the suitability? Does it generate the funding for the purposes needed, which in this case is more aligned with police staffing than facilities? And then how much money could it generate? So we've tried to assess different sources this way. Some are the general revenue sources available to cities, like property tax, B&O, utility. There's some public safety specific revenues. There's a public safety sales tax that could be implemented. And we've also included the police foundation here. And then we tried to explore some of the development specific revenues, and we didn't feel like many of them were good fits because they're mostly focused on capital facilities.
Councilmember Ross, did you have a question before they?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. On sales tax, you label it public safety sales tax. Is that some derivative of the standard sales tax, the retail sales tax that we collect?
Yep. The public safety sales tax is available to cities, and you can implement up to 0.1% sales tax without voter approval and up to a 0.3% with voter approval. I think based on your 2017 taxable retail sales, that would generate about $659,000. Other cities have used this, like North Bend and Kirkland just passed one.
Okay, and have you started to look at the growth of the potential growth? We got a 10-year plan. We have increase in housing density and needs and different commercial and retail additions and more tax collected. And assuming that our public safety, I think it's roughly 60% of our budget, fire and police, have you extrapolated how much just the organic growth is going to pay for this increase in budget? And don't have to answer now, but something to think about.
Mm-hmm. We didn't estimate the amount, but we did call out the increase in property tax generated on development and sales tax on development, as well as the addition of those properties to the tax roll, because they will generate some additional revenues to cover costs of service.
So in other words, it's not all new taxes or new revenue sources. It's going to organically grow with those, aligning this with the town center, et cetera.
Correct.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
That actually concludes our presentation, so we're happy to take additional questions. I appreciate the point that was just made about organic growth, and we were going to make that as well, is that we're trying to ramp up your public safety feature as your community continues to mature and evolve. So hopefully those two things are on pace, but you'll have lots of points of decision along the way as well to make those different decisions. So happy to take other questions.
Councilmember Ross.
No, I was on the safety committee, and Brian and Kristen were regular presenters, and they did a tremendous job helping us through this, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Our next agenda item is the city manager recruitment profile. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, before I call on Mr. Sugg again, you do have the process before you in regards to the recruitment of your permanent city manager. There are 4 crucial decisions that you need to make this evening, at least 3 and maybe a 4th. The first is you need to approve the city manager recruitment profile, and in so doing, you will be approving the selection criteria. That's essential if you're going to discuss these candidates in executive session. You need to do that. Second, you will determine the salary level to be advertised, and you have a memo in your packet outlining those recommendations as well. And I have here this evening a revised project schedule, and you'll need to look at that and see if that meets with your time frame. I'll hand those down. Should be a copy for everyone there. And then, which Mr. Sugg will talk about here in just a minute, you may wish to discuss what level of public involvement that you will want in this selection process. Right now, there is a reception on the evening on the first day that they're in town, and then that is kind of the extent of the public involvement piece of that. So if you want an interview panel with citizens, you'll need to discuss that as well. So with that, I'll turn it to Mr. Sugg, who will introduce our consultant as well.
Good evening once again. Mike Sugg, Management Analyst here at the City. I am joined by Linnell Klein, who is from our consulting team performing the City Manager recruitment. That firm is called Cullen Bessinger and Associates. And I think the City Manager summed it up nicely. There are a few things that we're looking for your feedback on tonight, and I'll have Linnell go ahead and introduce those items right now.
Okay. Well, first off, we're really excited to be working with the City of Sammamish on this recruitment. You have in the agenda packet the verbiage that we are suggesting to use for the brochure. We do have a draft copy. This won't be the final, of course, that you can look at after the meeting. So you can see what it will look like with the pictures and everything. So we are planning to advertise and post the position on Friday. If there's any changes that you want to the verbiage that you have, we're happy to incorporate those changes. And even once the position is posted, the only place we post the actual brochure is on our website. We link to it from, the places that we advertise with, and so we can make changes at any time without having to, email the brochure to a lot of places. So again, any feedback on the verbiage that you want, we would like to have by Friday on the brochure. And then so we just need to discuss the salary range that you want to pay for that. Our recommendation, we did a salary survey. We found that cities in the state of Washington that have around the same population, the average salary is $195,000 a year for their city managers. And so our recommendation would be the range be between 175 and 225. But of course, it is your decision to make, so.
Councilmember Ross?
What is our current salary, last contract we had?
I
What was our
believe,
last contract?
I
Salary?
believe Lyman's was 190, would have been 197. Yeah, the most recent contract we had was, the salary was 197,000 a year.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, sorry, I had some questions on the verbiage. Did you want those now, or?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So on page 6, there was a comment that said, in these increasingly uncertain financial times. I thought that sounded a little dire.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that we're in such a bad place right now,
At the stock market the last couple of weeks.
I know, but I mean, still, I don't.
Page 6 in the packet or page 6 on
Sorry,
the document?
Page 6 on the document,
Okay.
sorry. And then the other thing is that it talked about working with the council, it talked about working with the mayor. I don't know that we need to call it the mayor separate, right? Like working with staff and council, I think that would be fine. And then on page 7, there was a comment about them being efficient and addressing things quickly, and it used the term dilly-dally, and I don't know why, but that just didn't strike me as
Professional.
yes, thank you, professional. So I think we could probably find a different term. And again, it's kind of a nitpick, but it just didn't strike me as kind of the tone we were looking for there. That
Sounds good. We can make those changes.
and then there was one other question under the opportunities and challenges where it talked about the 2019 comp plan updates. Was that just meaning the general comp plan updates, or was there something special we were referring to there?
General.
Just general,
Just
okay.
general.
That was it, sorry.
Okay. No, those are great suggestions, so thank you. We will take those into account. Were there any other comments on the verbiage?
I don't have any more lights on.
Chrissy?
Oh, yes, Councilman Mershon.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
Yeah, on page, there was just a typo, I think, on page 8, right before compensation. It says the individual will have a thorough understand municipal organizations.
Okay.
And I think that's a thorough understanding of municipal organizations and functions of city government is required. Just that first sentence on that paragraph right before compensation.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Yeah, if you're looking for opinions or feelings on the salary range, I'm comfortable with that salary range in as much as we're trying to find folks that are the best, right? We want to not have there be an issue with salary when it comes to finding who we want to be our permanent city manager. So I would hope that we can, find the right person and help them fit in there. I do notice that, and I know there were some phone calls back and forth about whether or not living in the city is not mandatory but is preferred. I would hope that the city manager can live in the city, and I would hope that they can live in the city for that salary range. I think that's reasonable. I think that what we're going for, as far as this council member is concerned, is somebody that's going to make us better, work with our city, and be a really strong, active player. So I would hope that we're kind of going for a candidate pool that is not homogeneous, an across-the-board spectrum of different kinds of backgrounds, different histories. And I'm not sure how it's your recruiting process, but just in terms of when we're looking for folks at that salary range, it gives us a chance to pick from the best. And I would hope that we can find a group of people that have a very diverse background.
That is always our goal. Diversity is very important to us.
So what happens if you don't get the response? What is a qualified or a qualifying pool?
Well, in this case, we would look for somebody with experience, somebody that's faced a lot of the same challenges that Sammamish has. If we are not happy with the pool that we have when the job closes, then we extend the deadline, we do more marketing, we do more outreach, we work harder. We may start working with and vetting the candidates that we like from the first pool, but if we're not happy with it, we don't settle with a with a pool that we're not happy with. We do more marketing, more outreach, and we get the pool that we want.
And do you engage us along the way? When do you engage us and say, here's what we have so far, and are you happy with this, or do you? Right, I got it. I just want to make sure when does that happen, and how does that happen?
Typically, we do the first culling, so we'll interview the candidates, and we'll look at the resumes, the credentials. We'll make that first cut. We generally start working like around 12, about a dozen individuals. We'll vet them entirely. The background checks will be done, reference checks, internet checks. We'll present that to you in a report so you get a really well-rounded picture of each candidate. And then from there, you can pick the finalists that you want to interview. Okay. But based on the interviews that we've had with the City Council and understanding the challenges here, we have a good sense of what you're looking for. And so that makes it easier when the resumes come in to pick those that will be the best fit for the community and the challenges and the opportunities that are here now.
Was that you on the phone that we spoke with? Did we talk to you?
Yes.
Thank you for the call. I appreciated that very much. So I'm grateful.
You're welcome.
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Councilmember Valderrama.
Yeah, just following on what Jason was just saying, I have more than a strong preference that the city manager should live in our city to make that known. In the software industry, we have a saying that we want to eat our own dog food. So you got to understand that the product. I want a city manager who has the same problems and concerns about the schools, there was a study that came out on our water quality that made some of us say, the contaminants is a little high. I want the city manager to be sitting there and saying, okay, I'm drinking this too. I want that same concern. I'm driving these roads. I'm looking at the stormwater erosion. So I'd like a city manager that eats his own dog food as well on a day-to-day basis. It's more than just a strong preference.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important as well. The median home price in Sammamish is very high, and so that's where the salary is important.
I understand where it's coming from.
Yeah.
But I want them to have those day-to-day concerns that empathize with people.
Yeah.
Good. Councilmember Ross.
First of all, on the page 7, start talking about not talking about pros and cons on policy, et cetera. I thought I'd like to see some more explicit leadership on RAA responsibilities between council and staff, helping keeping the roles well defined between policy versus staff, development, implementation, execution. So I think I wanted to be clear on that in the roles that we have a skillful manager, because when we start crossing, we get inefficient. And so I thought it was very, very important for a city manager to have a word and say, hey, that's not, we'll work that for you. We'll get you some options on the policy direction or vice versa. You're stepping into policy. That's what council has to make a decision on.
Okay.
Someone who's very blunt and clear and is able to monitor the responsibilities of the roles. Secondly, I do agree strongly with what Councilmember Valderrama mentioned about living in Sammamish. At the salary they're receiving, they should be able to reside in Sammamish. And quite frankly, when you look at Bellevue, Issaquah, and Redmond that surrounds us, they're actually more expensive houses than in Sammamish. So what are we talking about? Having someone move to Renton, Newcastle, or north into Bothell? I mean, it really gets a little bit far-reaching real quickly if we start talking about financial feasibility as a rationale for not living in Sammamish. So I strongly encourage that we have someone who lives in Sammamish. In fact, I would say a requirement that they live in Sammamish.
Deputy Mayor Moran.
I also feel strongly about them living in Sammamish from the standpoint of should we have an emergency? Should we have an earthquake? Should we have an emergency where we need them to be here? We don't need them to be when we're cut off from Issaquah and we're cut off from Redmond. We need them to be here. We don't need them to be someplace where they can't get here.
Okay.
Can I jump in?
Yes. And
Okay, talking real quick about the salary range. I like the 175 to 225. However, I noticed in the memo you kind of put together to support that, you said it would be is a stated expectation to be in the lower half, but that's not in the posting. So I didn't know what the intent was with in the memo to say we're going to, we're going to try to get in the lower half, but if we got the right candidate, we'll get in the upper half. But that's not in the actual posting. Was that intentional or just an oversight?
It was an oversight. We can fix that.
All right. Then the other thing is, and I think maybe you can expound on this in the compensation section, and to the point about living, I strongly prefer that the city manager live in the city as well, but I'm not. I think it might be better that we make an exception if we have the right candidate that can't live in Sammamish, versus we don't want to try to get him there to begin with. So we might want to change that posting. But in that regard, I think in the compensation you can kind of say, but the whole thing is open as to, and I don't know if there's other non-taxable type of benefits like a car stipend and or even a living stipend, if that's taxable versus non-taxable from a federal perspective and everything. So I would just put some broad language in there, but the total compensation is open to negotiation or something like that.
Okay.
Okay. I would concur with what was just said on the salary. I think that's good. As far as residency, it's my understanding that is a requirement unless we state otherwise. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct in the state of Washington.
So we would then expect everyone else's. Do you know of other jurisdictions that have their city manager that does not live within their city limits?
There are some. I know we did the Carnation recruitment, and they waived that requirement. In the case of when we did the Burien recruitment, they had the requirement, but they gave, 18 months or a certain amount of time for him to be able to move into the community. So it just depends on the community and what's important to them.
I like the idea, especially if they're somewhat local and we land on that candidate, that there's a window, but I do have a preference that they live in the city. I do have a question, though, and I don't know if we have the context or history. Not our most recent city manager, but the city manager before that, who was our city manager for a very long time, did not live in the city of Sammamish. In fact, lived in unincorporated King County. Do you have any idea if there was, obviously the council had some thought process behind that one. Do you have any history, Romero, or?
No, they've always been required to live in the city.
But Ben didn't. He lived in the Notch. So
Sorry?
Ben didn't. He lived in the Notch. He lived in unincorporated.
Well, he lived in what was in our PAA, so you were allowed to live in the PAA area. So you.
Okay.
But you had to live in the city or the PAA, and so that's where he was living. Is in our PAA.
So do we need? So would we need to specify that as well? The PAA. Potential annexation area. Sorry.
There's not much of it left.
No, there's not, but
yes, we can definitely add that.
Okay. Okay, Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I think we all want the city manager to live in the city, but if we're doing a nationwide search and there are people applying from much lower cost of living areas, which most of the country is, I think that having some leeway to negotiate is going to be really important, because I don't think we want to miss out on a really great candidate that happens to be moving here from, the southern half of the country. This is a very difficult area to afford a home if you're coming from even Ohio. There are just a lot of places where the homes cost so much less, and to have to afford a $900,000 house, assuming someone moves here with a couple of kids, they're looking at an $800,000 or $900,000 house, and if their current home sells for $300,000, that's a big step up, even at that income level. So I think it's great that we put it out there. We say that it's a preference. Or exceptions can be made, but I think we need to be flexible on that, just in case. So
you're not getting consensus from council on that one. Mr. City Manager, I don't know if you want us to raise our hands on that one, because she's going to need to know what to put in that, whether it's has to or does not have to?
Well,
The code says you have.
yeah, you probably will need to decide. What I would suggest to you is that you go along with the statute, that it is required but is negotiable if they can't find a place. And that's something they could bring to you, and you could make that determination at that particular time. Likewise, once you make that selection, that person probably will have some other things they'll want you to talk about, so everything is somewhat negotiable. I will indicate, I think the salary range is appropriate. I think in your hiring decision that the minimum that you'll hire this person at is going to be at least 190, because if you go lower than that, you're going to be bumping up against your department heads, and you're going to have some separation there. You get compression from the top, but that does fit into that salary range as well.
Councilmember Ross.
I like what the city manager recommended, so if we can use that statute, I think it's a great way to characterize it.
Everyone amenable to that?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll just vote it down later.
You have to live in the city, but exceptions will be considered.
What was that? Councilmember
So
Horn.
I'm sorry, I think we just agreed to the candidate or the city manager must live within the city or the PAA, but exceptions may be considered.
Yes.
That is correct.
Yep.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Yes, there was some conversation just a little bit ago, I think it was Councilmember Hornish mentioned about posting the salary range on the actual posting itself. So, and you have to put a range, I get that, but we've all negotiated for salary before. I would hope that is, we obviously don't want to pay more than we have to. So, I would think that we should try to aim low, hope for the best, and negotiate up, from the bottom up rather than, top down. It's kind of hard to negotiate now.
Once you
right?
say the top number, that's what they're going to look at.
Exactly, right? So I would, I think, in excess of 190 or something like that. I don't know. I mean, I would just hope that we can try to be cognizant of budgets. I mean, I don't know that there's a number that we wouldn't spend for the right person. I think that there is some budget issues as far as staffing is concerned and director salaries and things like that we need to be, there are some floors, right? Yeah. I don't think that it's not unlimited that we would, for a salary, but at the same time, I think we're looking for the right person for our permanent city manager. So I would hope that we can leave that part open in as much as we, on the posting itself, to try to encourage the right person to apply. And frankly, I hope they've got great negotiation skills, because they're going to need them.
Well, we have found on recruitments where we don't post a salary range, you don't tend to get as much of a response. They want to know what that range is. They want to know what ballpark they're in before they put their hat in the ring.
Okay.
So, but we can put, as we worded it in the memo, just say hoping to pay at the lower end.
Do we want to say that, though?
I don't think we do.
I think so, no.
I mean, I can see where we'd say, 190 plus.
Or commensurate with experience, right? You have a range and.
Experience, yeah, I think that's, I guess I don't want to say towards the lower range. That to me sounds like, they don't want to pay, or here they are, another wealthy community out in Washington that doesn't want to pay for what we're worth. I don't want to put off a negative vibe when we're trying to get the right person in the door, before they see what's really going on here, right?
Well,
we want to encourage them to come in. So I want to do this is your gig, right? This is your field, so you're the recruiter. So I would hope that you can kind of help us. What's been successful? What have been the models, the verbiage that's been successful in the past that gives us the best pool of qualified candidates for us to choose from?
If we just say that the salary range is 175 to 225 and will depend on qualifications and experience, I think that will work very well.
Nice, Thank you.
So just to clarify, I want to make sure that are we eliminating the sentence in here that says the city will pay the upper range to get the right person? Because that language is really awkward.
Yes.
Okay.
We will eliminate that sentence.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but I did have some questions about the schedule.
Okay.
So one of my questions is, it just seems like there's a really big gap between not even when we first post this, but even from the closing, so January 18th would be the closing for submissions, and we wouldn't actually bring anyone in for the finalists wouldn't even be chosen until February 19th, so that's a full month. I know you have a lot of work to do, which I understand, but I'm just wondering for the really great applicants, if someone sees this in, mid to late December, and we're not bringing anybody to Sammamish until March 7th, that feels like a really long time. And I'm worried, how do we hold on to the really great candidates in between that time?
This has been our process for as long as I've been with the company, which is several years now, and it has not been a problem.
Okay.
So the reports that we compile with the background checks and the introduction and all of the materials will actually come to the council on February 12th. And so then you will have a week to review them before you make the decision on the 19th of who you would like to interview.
Okay.
So when we receive an application for the position, we actually send them a copy of the project schedule so they know up front exactly when everything is going to happen.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, I was just going to add that you don't select finalists until the 19th of February. And it's from that date then that we will contact those individuals, and they've got to make travel arrangements and everything else. So from February 19th to March the 7th is not all that long a period of time. You're absolutely right, from the time you start till that, there's a good chance that you could lose a few candidates in that process. That just kind of happens, but I don't know how you compress that much more than that. I will also indicate, too, that we've kind of moved that back somewhat because in talking with you, some of you couldn't be here any during that time, so we did have to bump that schedule just a little bit. And again, trying to accommodate everyone's schedules is difficult.
Well, and the really nice part about having the background checks done up front is once you select the candidate that you want, you can just go right into negotiations. You don't have to wait.
So one additional comment or thought on the schedule is that it's to some degree following council schedule. And so if you want to potentially expedite anything, I think the addition of a council meeting could be injected in here, maybe at the end of January if needed.
Sure.
To expedite. The other thing that came up, I think Deputy Mayor Moran said she is not going to be here for that February 19th, which would be fairly important to have the full council, and that is, as I want to point out, is also midwinter break. And so that meeting for the February 19th may be...
I'll phone in for it.
Okay. But, well, I know, but I throw it out because we talked about it a little bit in the agenda meeting, so I don't know if anyone else is...
I'm not sure. I got to weigh in on the schedule, but I'm out that week as well and probably not available in a remote area.
I think we may want to investigate an alternative date, just if we're going to have people gone.
Yeah, let's try to do that.
Not that I'm anxious, but I'm looking right now.
Okay. I just think it's really important that we're all here, and if we can be physically present for Deputy Mayor Moran.
Mentally.
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes.
While you're looking at that, city manager, interim city manager, with all due respect, does all this jive with your schedule and your expectations of your interimness?
The other half's not here to ask that question, right?
This chair will be vacant towards the end of April, so you'll need to make a decision before then.
Okay.
Aligns with your golf skills.
Thank you.
That's in line with what my wife tells me we're going on.
There you go.
I think with respect to our current interim city manager and schedule and timeline, that we may want to consider adding additional meetings just for the purpose of this process. So that would leave us with, a date maybe at the last week in January to add a meeting.
But we don't need to decide that now. I think.
No, but I want to make sure that council might be amenable to doing that if need be.
Well, can I jump in real quick? It would be nice if we could move the 19th to select the finalists to the 12th. I mean, to accelerate it 1 week. But I don't know how that portrays into the CBNA schedule, timing, and everything.
So does that
Yeah, the background checks do take time, unfortunately, but we can,
I will point out we may not be here the 12th. The legislative committee may be in Olympia on the 12th. So.
Background checks are when? I'm sorry.
we do the background checks between the 18th, between the closing date and when we send the reports to the council, which currently is scheduled on February 12th.
Okay.
But we can make changes.
Let us put our heads together and we'll send you an
Please.
updated
Okay.
calendar. 'Cause we're going to need to look at just how this work flows and if we can get it all completed in time.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. So did you get all of your questions answered? You needed salary range,
Yeah, I need-
the
you need-
timeline.
You need to approve the profile as amended.
Yes.
And we'll send you a copy back of that, so if you don't like it, we could change it again if we need to. And the salary schedule.
Okay, so do we know what that, do you want to put that on consent, or you need us to do the amended thing since we don't physically have it tonight? Okay, so I need a
I
motion.
move that we approve the
Need a motion, or do you need a head nod?
It'd be good, because again, you're approving the selection criteria.
Okay.
Because if you do not approve the selection criteria in open meeting with discussing that, you cannot discuss the candidates in executive session. And you're going to want to have that conversation in executive session.
So I move that we approve the candidate profile and salary as amended and the salary schedule.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 7-0, we have approved the salary schedule and the profile as amended. Do you need anything else from us formally?
I think we're good tonight.
Okay, good. Nope, we've got more business to do.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Tomorrow night at the PIC meeting, there is the SCA annual meeting, and then there's also the PIC meeting. And at the annual meeting is the SCA board selection. And so I will have to vote on one of the candidates for the North Caucus. At this juncture, I know of 3 of the candidates. It's possible somebody could get nominated from the floor. So Mary Lou Pauley from Issaquah, Davina Doer from Bothell, and the third is the current one, Mercer Island.
Oh, Wendy Weicker?
No. No. I'm forgetting his name. And I don't think it's in the packet either, so there's nothing to reference on that. I'll think of it right after we adjourn. So it may be hard to give direction, especially if somebody's nominated from the floor. But if we have a preference,
Mary Lou?
Yeah, that would be my preference. Would be
I would support
Mary Lou
that.
Pauley for.
Yeah, it's our neighbor.
So okay.
We have those 2 unfinished items we need.
Oh, that's right. We do. We
Consent
do.
items. Oh,
Okay. Can I finish this and circle back?
You certainly.
Okay, good. Sorry. I was looking at the agenda over here, not the paper copy that I had scribbled on. And then the action items for PIC, the things that will be voted on there are the chair and the vice chair for PIC for 2019. The nominating committee has done Ed Prince for chair and myself as vice chair again for 2019. And then you should have all gotten the email from SCA on the regional board and committee appointments. Of note is that PIC doesn't actually assign these are recommendations to the SCA board, and the SCA board then formalizes those. But hopefully you had an opportunity to look at those. And then there's the Regional Affordable Housing Task Force Plan, and I've emailed all of this to you previously, so I need to incorporate any comments that you might have on that, as well as the appointments.
that's the same plan that I emailed out last week in my report that we reviewed at the GMPC.
So if you have any additional comments that you would like me to relay at PIC.
Give them more regards.
All right, I'll let them know. And everyone is okay with the board and committee appointments?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So I think Deputy Mayor Moran, we'll circle back because I think you have some stuff on EFR, and I wanted to make sure that we're up to speed on ESEB Fire and Rescue. I noted some things on social media that they've approved a merger between Fire District 10 and 27 that will be on the February ballot. So, okay. Okay, so let's go back to those unfinished items from consent that we pulled.
13, 15.
Yes, so we'll do item 13 first, and that is the contract for the City Prosecutor Services, the law firm of Lynn Moberly. Councilmember Valderrama, you pulled that. Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, mine is more a comment into it. And if you look at your packet, you have a number of different legal contracts that are listed there. The King County District Court that was up for review for comparison and bidding with Issaquah. I believe it was last year that we had done that. And then you have the public defense that was 2 years. 4 years ago, two contracts in particular had cited. The one for the public defense that did get bid out 2 years ago, and the one for the prosecution, Lynn Moberly. And it wasn't that there was any problem with them, but we wanted to make sure is that the city reviews that contract and make sure that we're getting a good value for it. That's actually how the public defense contract went back out for bid 2 years ago. And to see if there's a comparison. If we want to stay with the same contractor, the discussion was that they would provide a sole source justification saying, hey, they're providing great service as she is providing to date, and just reminding the city, they get it in the record that next cycle in 2 years, we go through that review again to make sure the city's getting the best service, that it can get the bang for the buck. And if we believe so, as has been in the past, we just write a quick sole source justification for the council to look at, as has been done with others. That's it.
Mr. City Manager?
We can do that. In fact, actually, I thought I sent that out, but if not, I'll send it out to you tomorrow that
Okay.
we did put one together.
Thank you.
I can send that
Yeah,
to you.
that's just a good business practice.
Did you want to make a motion?
So with that, I move that we approve the contract for the law firm of Lynn Mosley for City Prosecutor Services.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, I still have a bunch of lights on, but I'm assuming, do we have lights? It's, Councilman Ritchie.
Yeah, I did have a question. So from November of 17 to October of 2018, the prosecutor averaged 30 hours per month working on contested calendared cases. So we're paying $114,000 and change for 30 hours a month? Am I reading that correctly or no?
I can probably answer that, Mayor. The contested calendar, and I'm not a prosecutor, but the contested calendar is traffic infractions. Lynn also does, or her firm also does, all the criminal cases. She was asked to go in a couple years ago and take on the traffic infraction calendar because without a prosecutor there, the judge was dismissing quite a few of the tickets. So her presence on the traffic calendar ticket, which is that other 30 hours, has led to some increase in traffic fines.
Yeah, I think the Public Safety Committee a couple years ago saw the
Trade-off.
trade-off, and it was,
There was a net benefit to
There
the
was.
city by having
Yep.
this in. So that we did go through that same discussion.
and
Thank you.
it's the trade-off that Councilmember Valderrama was talking about, is the revenue to the city, as opposed if they issue a $200 ticket and all those tickets are going away, and we're not collecting the
Yeah, so
revenue.
we ended up having a net benefit by paying her to make sure and end the enforcement.
Okay, so I guess what I just heard Councilmember Valderrama say is, are we getting, good value out of this, right? And then I heard interim city manager Patterson say, I'll send you something if I haven't already, and then we move to accept this. So
We can terminate this contract at any time. If our city manager presents us something that gives us pause, there is, where is it? The termination. The city reserves the right to terminate or suspend this agreement at any time with or without cause upon 7 days prior written notice. So if we need to, we can certainly do that.
I'm not saying I want to do that necessarily from this seat. I guess I just would like to see, there's some history here that I wasn't on the council for that shows that by having somebody there at these to deal with traffic tickets, we're getting more money than we are getting by spending. And that I'm assuming that's the case. I'm not arguing that point, but that's just a significant amount of money to put out. And what does that look like? I just kind of want to see the math. And if it's easy, good. If it's not, fine. And that that's just a lot of money, and are we getting what back in exchange? And can we get a better deal and still get the same amount of money back?
I'll collect that data and get it to you here in the next couple of days.
Do we have to vote on this tonight? This is due tonight?
Well, there's a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded, so yes.
Well, I get that, I understand it, but is there a time-sensitive reason we need to pass this motion tonight?
I think the contract renews January 1, and we don't have another meeting.
Expires the
so
end of the year.
yes.
Did you say it had an out clause, 7-day notice?
It says in the contract that we're signing that the termination requires 7 days' notice, and I'm scrolling to find it again.
Or 4.1.
Thank you. It says the city reserves the right to terminate or suspend this agreement at any time with or without cause upon 7 days prior written notice.
So we could approve it and follow up with Councilmember Ritchie's inquiry, and that might be the best approach.
Yes, and I think it was Beth Goldberg that presented to the Public Safety Committee, if memory serves, if that helps direct you to a PowerPoint presentation, because I recall it being PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, seeing no more questions, all those in favor of the approval of the Lynn Moberly contract, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, by a vote of 7-0, the contract is approved. So now we have item number 15. This is a contract amendment for traffic wraps for the installation of 7 additional utility box wraps for 2019 to 2020. Councilmember Valderrama.
Yes, so this is a project, just to give some history, that started 6 years ago with 2 prior councils that was fully supportive of it and actually should have been the leading edge. It got delayed a bit behind, and Issaquah's jumped ahead of us in putting wraps out, but we have the state of the art and the historical perspectives on it. It's something that the councils have always valued and been very supportive of. My basic question is because we had heard 2 pieces, one from the Arts Commissioner Shedd, who was talking about wanting $30,000 this year in the budget of their operating budget to be applied now. And then I heard you say that there was, I know there's more money there, but is that $30,000 in this budget now, or do we have to amend this to make sure they have it? Or if we approve item 15, will it meet the requirement of the $30,000 asked for by the Arts Commission?
Right, so there are a couple questions in there. So to answer the question simply is there's enough allocation, and what's allocated is definitely covered. So I'm going to give you a quick history, though, of the contract that I think will help clarify things. So the first contract, the only contract, was signed in January 5th of this year for $21,000 for 4 boxes. And the council approved that, or the city manager approved that, excuse me. That required a 50% deposit of about $10,000. Those 4 boxes have been completed by the end of this year, and therefore we should be able to finish and close out that contract for a total of $21,000. The amendment that's before you for approval tonight for $40,000 does require a 50% deposit, so that would add $20,000 in 2018. So technically, it would be about $40,000 to be expended in 2018 from the Arts Commission Fund.
From their operating budget?
Correct. Not on their capital, but in their operating budget.
Okay, so we will cover then the $30,000. And next year, you'll have that other $10,000, I think?
20. And next year will be about another 20 to finish it out.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Motion?
So with that, I am proud to move that we approve, let me get see if I can find the language out here, authorize the contract amendment for the traffic wraps for installation of 7 additional utility box wraps in 2019 and 2020 with that money in 2018.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 7-0, the contract is approved. Okay, now circling back.
And Lita, you got my full motion, right? But I want to make sure that's it.
Deputy Mayor Moran, did you want to go over?
No, I had, this came to everybody, I know it was late, but it came to everybody early this morning. It was just kind of an update on EF&R updates from fall. Chief,
oh, Mike, sorry, thank you.
Chief Clark came to see us in October. I think the biggest thing that's on here is the Fall City merger. And that is conversations that started months ago, but really hadn't. It had to go through Fall City. They had to take their vote. Then it had to go through the Boundary Review Board, and it had to make it through all of those steps. And so it really didn't pass any of that until within the last month. And so now it made it through the Boundary Review Board, and it's finally made its way. So once it made it through the Boundary Review Board, it now goes to a vote, which it will be taking place in February. The good news for us is that if the vote passes, what will happen, and they're anticipating it will, the good news for us is that the closest station then that would service the Trussex area would allow for service delivery to that area to be shorter than what it currently is. So that's the plus to the Sammamish. And so
when would the merger finalize? So when would they start getting coverage?
Well, from what I understand from the last conversation and last update that we were given was that as of December 1st, they were going to be in conversations back and forth with Fall City as to start working out of the station and try to start working out of the station together, starting 1/1.
Yeah. Yeah, they go down. We're augmenting that station is what's taking place. Currently today, that station is the first responder, as the Deputy Mayor cited, for Trossachs, Aldera, Montaigne region. So they are our first responders. They are currently in the same union for training and that. So, but this will now both give more resources to our southeast side, as well as tighten the integration between the two as they are integrated fully into District 10.
Okay.
So we're the net beneficiary of all of this is the bottom line.
Well, the reason I was asking on timing too is with the Issaquah Falls City Road project, that would then facilitate coverage with the closure. So, okay. And then that ballot measure, that's the merger between 10 and 27 is on for February 12th. Okay. All right. Does anyone else have a council report?
Oh, Army beat Navy again. And Merry Christmas to everybody.
And the Packers won.
Oh.
Okay, city manager's report, so we can get out of here.
Just want to wish all of you a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. So.
Thank you. Likewise.
To approve your requests in your report.
If you would, that would be great.
Do you need a motion for that?
Motion second be great.
I would like to move that we approve the 2 requests in the city manager's report. One was for a $1,000 fund for employee recognition, and the other one was for a couple of well-earned days off.
Second.
Do you want to separate those or lump them together? I don't
Just
think.
lump them
well, I
together
don't see a
and move
problem, but I
on.
just wanted to be
Can
sure.
we just?
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 7-0, the employee recognition of $1,000, and you can have some time off.
And I move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of adjourning say aye.
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 We are adjourned at 8:22.